Hello folks, and welcome back to another episode of what I'm hoping will be an ongoing diary of my attempts to create a game for Sega Mega Drive. So check out my earlier two videos where I set up the development environment if you're interested in that. In summary, I'm looking to make a tower defense game for Sega Mega Drive because I'm a big fan of tower defense. This video is largely about just getting into the habit of keeping the videos flowing, and also realizing that I should probably talk about some of the design elements that I need to consider moving forward, and ultimately use that as a guide to direct future videos and development and research efforts. To that end, on the screen you will see that I've got a Google document, Mega Tower Design Notes. There's a couple things I've fleshed out. I will just read over the points. So one question is, what are levels actually going to look like? There's a whole bunch of things that I need to work out. So determining if a tower can be placed in a given location. Now, even though I haven't done a video until now, I have been tinkering away with some code and learning things in the background. And in the process of doing that, I've been checking out a lot of Pigsy's game dev tutorials, which I think I've linked in the first video. For the purposes of determining if a tower can be placed in a given location, we will check out his video on how to code level collision for 2D games in his beginner game dev tutorials playlist. And I'll just drop a link in there for now, so I can come back to that when it's relevant. There will be the question of working out what paths that enemies can take. To keep things simple, we will stick to straight lines, ultimately allow diagonals and branching paths, so that'll be an interesting challenge to solve. We will need to determine if enemies are within range of towers, so I did ask ChatGPT about this. And there were a few options that came up. Now, I have done a little bit of experimenting with that by implementing one of the suggested algorithms. You'll see on the screen a bit of a demo that I coded up. The demo is a bit rough, but it does demonstrate ultimately what we're trying to achieve. So when the enemy sprites come within the range of a given tower, that tower can attack. We'll go into that, I think, in a little bit more detail in a dedicated video because there's some interesting options in there. One of my key takeaways in my investigations there was that we would use the square of the distance. That has the benefits that it's simple, no trigonometry, and if we keep the radius to a power of 2, we can use bit shifting to speed up calculations further. There's also going to be the question on how do we select towers and possibly enemies during gameplay. For that, I envision moving cursor with D-pad, which changes to indicate that something is selectable. And that probably ties in with the next question, which is in-game status display. Mega Drive has a dedicated window, which is a subplane of plane A in the background. So that's essentially a portion of the A background plane that does not move, whereas you can move the rest of the plane around. It's commonly used in games. And in that, we might have a tower menu for things like upgrading. I don't know whether we'll go for upgrading on levels or upgrading specific aspects. I think the key thing is to keep a lot of this as simple as possible in the very beginning, basically because I got a lot to work out as I go. But I imagine that learning how to use the window subplane is going to be an entire video all on its own. We'll probably have a video for that later on, after I learn how to do it. Then there's the aspects of the towers themselves and basic tower behavior. I'm thinking for simplicity purposes, the towers don't need to miss. This is mostly about, to me, a tower defense game is mostly about strategy of placement and options, overlap, things like that. So we don't need to bog down on the possibility of, oh, did we hit? Did we miss? Or maybe that could be a thing. I don't know. Initially, I'll start with projectile towers and there'll be no projectile sprites, and that's probably going to stay that way due to hardware limitations. But we might move on to some additional types down the line. My scratchings here, we've got projectiles, fast firing, no projectile sprite. Missile, we'll probably have a missile projectile sprite and might consider implementing splash damage or area of effect. And then we could possibly have something like a laser where I work out if either I can draw a line for weapon discharge or whether we work out something to do with sprites for that. Now, of course, the challenge with drawing a line on the Mega Drive is the Mega Drive doesn't have a bit-mapped frame buffer like something like a PC, for example, or more modern game consoles would have. It's all tile-based. SGDK offers a solution, and there are plenty of games that have essentially emulated their own software frame buffers in the past to be able to essentially draw arbitrary pixels onto the display. I've tinkered with that a little bit, and it feels like that's going to be an advanced challenge, I think. I may have mentioned it already, there's going to be the prospect of upgrade mechanics. I'd like this to be able to happen during the actual progress of a level, so like live, rather than sort of between games, so to speak. I'm thinking level-based, where each level for each tower, individual tower, it might increase range, damage per shot, and rate of fire. And possibly the idea of reselling towers, where you demolish them to return some funds, so you can change up your tower deployments, I guess you could say. So that's a rough sketching of the design elements that I've highlighted I'll need to consider. Of course, there's going to be a lot more that comes up along the way, but this is a good guide to sort of get me started and give me some direction. I think the next video that we'll look at will be working on getting some kind of basic background graphic to represent a level with some simple, straightforward, straight line paths and some sprites that should ultimately indicate places where we can't put towers. I'm thinking that I might ask ChatGPT about that, but I could also be looking at places like itch.io for free game assets. That's a quick wrap up for now, just to get this video out and get some kind of rough design out there to, if anything, remind myself that this is a thing that's moving forward. Well, I hope somebody out there found that interesting, and thank you for joining me so far, and hopefully in the future as we go along on this journey. And until next time, see ya.